All right, guys, we're gonna get started in a bit. I think I'm still gonna give you a minute to kind of chow down your food. But before I start, I kind of wanna understand the demographics of the audience. So how many of you guys already have Zoom rooms? Oh, wow, okay. How many of you guys have more than 50 Zoom rooms? How many of you guys have more than 100? More than 200? Wow, amazing. All right, how many of you guys would say most of your rooms are like 2 to 7 huddle type of rooms? Most of your rooms. How many of you guys would say most of your rooms are medium? Okay, awesome. And then how many of you guys have like really big like training rooms or auditoriums that you guys like are using Zoom in, or you guys don't have to be using right now, and hopefully after the presentation you're using Zoom rooms. All right, well, thanks for your show of hands. And before we start, some of the housekeeping. I don't have enough for every one of you guys, but I have this QR code that you guys can take after the session. Lucky 10 people can get it after. I will keep one for myself so you can like take a picture of it maybe, or go to the QR code directly. What this is basically a more breakdown of today's session, like written out. It has like some elevation drawing. It has functional drawings of some of the rooms that we're going to be talking about. So it's really, it will really be helpful for you guys. We spent a lot of time on these designs. This is something that I'm working on constantly every day to improve, simplify, and things like that. So please check us out over here, and that will, I'm hoping that will be helpful for you guys. So let's get started. I'm sure you guys know what session you're in, and if you're reading this title and you're like, I'm in a wrong room, like right now is the chance to go right now. But we're going to be talking about Zoom's favorite room setups. So we're not here to talk about millions of options that are out there, but we're talking about the few that Zoom had implemented internally within Zoom that we found helpful, that we found as a good experience. And if you guys have any devices out there that you think that might that might look good up here, do let me know after the session, and our team would love to evaluate that particular hardware. So let's get started. My name is JJ. I'm in the solutions architect team. Again, we take a lot of time to basically take Zoom rooms and figure out what hardware and what equipment it plays really well with, and we kind of put together an entire room for different use cases that work really well. So that's me. So before I start, I want to try to convince you guys, and it seemed like most of you guys were already deploying Zoom, but let's just kind of kind of tell you the reason why Zoom likes to standardize on Zoom rooms. Obviously, reason one is we are Zoom, so we should use our own product. But another thing is we have a global office presence. So what we want is employees that are traveling back and forth, different rooms, different offices, different places. We want to standardize our user experience, and we can do that with Zoom rooms, where traditionally if you program something in Japan, it will probably be a different programming when you program it in US. The user interface and everything will look completely different, right? So we standardize, as you can tell. One-touch join a meeting is a great way to start a meeting. Next thing is calendar integration and scheduling displays. Proximity content share, so wirelessly being able to share your content is a great additional that you can do anywhere in your offices, anywhere in your Zoom rooms. Next is multi-share, so you can share more than one content in a Zoom room. You can be looking at two different content at the same time. So traditionally, On the left, what you see is typical what conference room hardware consists of. On the right, you see a much more simplified hardware list. What you need is audio input, that's your microphone, video input, which is your camera, video output, which is your speaker output, audio output, which is your speaker, video output, which is your display, and a controller to kind of tie all of that together. And in the middle of everything, it is the Zoom Room PC, Windows, Mac, Chrome, and so on. So let's jump into our design, starting from our scheduling display. So our scheduling display, I don't know if you know our license model, but as long as you have one Zoom Room license, you're able to have as many scheduling display as you want. So think about maybe the phone rooms that maybe you're not thinking about putting Zoom Rooms in yet, but eventually just call rooms where there's no technology, but it's just acoustically treated like one-person room. You can put a scheduling display, tie that into your Outlook or Google Calendar. The hardware you need for that is an iPad with a heckler mount or a Crestron TSS. Next up, we have digital signage. So again, the same concept. For digital signages, as long as you have one Zoom Room license, you can have as many digital signages as you want. And our display option of choice is LG UH5EB. And I think this is a really good time to talk about residential displays versus commercial displays. How many of you guys are thinking about this dilemma right now? Like, should I be buying residential? Should I be paying twice or three times more to buy commercial displays? For Zoom, we want to recommend what's best for you guys, what's best for the customers, and we want to make you guys happy. So for us, we standardize on LG UH5EBs, and that's a commercial display. And the reason we chose this particular display is because of things like nits, which is the brightness of displays. So commercial displays are known to be much more brighter than regular displays. Obviously, residential displays are kind of built so that you guys can watch it at home late at night after work. So it doesn't need to output as much light. Another thing is as just technology gets cheaper, these displays get better, actually. So you could argue that residential displays will last as long as commercial displays. But you have to remember that a lot of these Zoom rooms, and especially signages, they need to be designed so that it can be on 24/7. And residential displays aren't really designed to do that. Right? So that's something that you guys can be thinking about. And also something you guys can, another thing that you guys can be thinking about is warranty, right? So commercial displays usually have much better warranty than some of the residential displays. When it comes to the PC that's running the actual digital signage software, is our Zoom's choice of hardware is Azul Access 3. It's a form factor of a little Chromecast, maybe a little bigger, so that it can kind of cool down a little better. But it has a hard HDMI. You can hardwire the Ethernet into it, and it has an HDMI plug. You can plug that directly into the display, or you can kind of have a little dongle so that it extends out of the display if you guys can't fit it back there. But we found this to be really ideal. If you're a Mac house, feel free to put a Mac Mini behind it and Dell Optiplex. One of the advantages of using digital signage using Zoom is you're essentially turning all of your display into a wirelessly shareable screen. So let's say you have a digital display right in your hallway, and you're walking down and you meet a coworker and you're like, oh, I want to show you this Excel sheet that I'm working on right now. Can I show it to you right now real quick? And instead of trying to turn your computer around, trying to show it, you can wirelessly share to the digital display right there, and you can wirelessly share, and you can basically have your conference room right there and then. Obviously, you can't do Zoom meetings onto it because it doesn't have any microphones or speakers baked in, but you can definitely do face-to-face and use it as a wirelessly shared screen. Let's move on to the phone room. So in phone rooms, what you have is an all-in-one touchscreen device that has a PC baked in and is also a touchscreen device. So our choice of PC is all-in-one PC, Dell 7760 or 7450. What it is with the touchscreen, you have the capability to control your Zoom room with the touchscreen controller, and you can also be in a Zoom meeting at the same time. So no need for additional controller. But let's say you did want one, and in this particular room, we just put it in there. I don't know why, but it is definitely an optional to put that in there. It's an iPad with a Heckler console or a Crestron TSW. Again, we understand that there's many options out there, but we wanted to kind of narrow it down to the ones that Zoom really likes to deploy internally. Mobile cart, we have the Display 10. Up to 2 to 5 people you can gather around with a Heckler-designed rolling stand for D7. And you would have probably seen this all over the place, right? So as you walk on the show floor, you would have probably seen it in the yellow room where there's a Shure MX8 ceiling microphone. That room has this particular cart with a companion mode. You'll probably see that around a lot. And I believe I believe D10 is here at the expo, so if you wanted to know more, please talk to them. And I think there might be a D10 guy in the audience too, so feel free to find him and talk to him to know more. For our huddle room, it's a D10 or AVer EP65 mounted on a wall. So D7s, they come in 2 different sizes. They come in 55-inch and a 75-inch. And also the AVer one comes in 65-inch as well. Again, here, the controller is optional. This room does have it. And the reason why we add it in some of our rooms is when you're having kind of a collaborative session around the Display 10, you don't really need the controller, right? You can do everything up on the screen. But let's say you have this room and you want to just sit down and have a traditional conference, then you don't want to be standing up every time you want to end the meeting or you want to like pin certain participants. You want to see which participants are in the room. So you have the iPad on the table instead of you having to get up every time. Next, we have a mix and match huddle. So when we were putting this presentation together, we weren't allowed to talk about the projects the big announcements we had on day one, which is Neat and Poly. So those devices will probably fit really well into this room. And for this sake of this topic, where we're talking about rooms that were already deployed, we chose not to put that in just yet. So same thing, display option, LG UH5AB, PC option, Dell Optiplex or Mac Mini or any, it could be HP or Lenovo, but we choose Dell internally. All-in-one devices, AVer VB342 Plus, Logitech Meetup, and Crestron UC soundbar. I think this is a really good point where we can talk about field of view of cameras. When you guys are choosing the cameras for your rooms, for smaller rooms, you're most likely the participants in the room will be closer to the display. Therefore, you probably need a wider field of view. The AVer VB342 Plus has a new 120-degree field of view. Meetup has 120-degree. And UC soundbar has 120-degree as well. But there are certain ones that are 90 degrees. That might make sense for you guys, or 120-degree might make more sense for you guys. Another difference between these products is mechanical PTZ. So AVer VB342 and Logitech Meetup, the camera can actually mechanically pan and tilt and zoom. So that you have a little more flexibility, whereas the Crestron UC soundbar, the camera that's baked in, has digital PTZ. So auto framing and features like that will more work with digitally cropping the image. Both is fine. just choose, just know the difference and pick whatever it makes sense for you guys in your organization. And then because the display is in touch, for this one, the controller isn't optional. You definitely want to have a controller. And another thing I will say here is this controller, it's the same option for all of the rooms. So I'm going to kind of stop talking about it after this one. Same as display. I'll stop highlighting. So we can have more more time for Q&A at the end. So for conference room 7 to 13, we break this down into a medium-sized room where you can fit 7 to 13 people. And this is Zoom's favorite setup. On the table, there's MXL 360 microphones, and MXL does have a booth here too as well. So go and talk to them for this, and then a JBL soundbar. There are other options that I'll talk about, but I specifically wanted to highlight this for the reason that to highlight one of Zoom Room's native features. So Zoom Room has 16 channels of audio echo cancellation DSP baked into our software. And when you use it with MXL microphones, it best uses that. So each microphone has 4 different capsules that's sending Zoom as 4 different channels. And Zoom is able to individually apply audio echo cancellation to all of those channels. So we highly recommend this to be for that native integration with Zoom Rooms. Another thing that you will notice for our tabletop configuration is front biasing. What that means is that people typically, maybe an integrator might kind of center all of the microphones to the center of the table, but we understand that that design is based around audio conferencing, where traditionally the speakerphone was specifically in the middle of the room, and everyone was looking at the speakerphone and talking into the speakerphone. But no more with Zoom Rooms, you're now looking up at the display, right? So what happens when the front row person is the microphone in the back is towards the center of the room, but is looking at the display and talking this way, right? Then you have a microphone that is, it's going to basically have to work harder to pick up your voice. It might be a reflection off of the display, so it might have more reverb in your tone or whatever you call it. So we tend to shift the microphones towards the front of the table, so that first person, the front row people that's speaking towards this display, can get picked up on the microphone. So here are the options: the JBL PSB1 soundbar and MXL AC360Z. One of the things that you guys should think about when you guys are picking your soundbar is, we like this soundbar, but you may say, what? Can this soundbar work? Can this soundbar work? Can this soundbar work? There's millions of consumer soundbars out there. One thing you guys have to remember is, there are many things you guys have to remember actually, but a couple of the feature is energy saving mode, right? So we like saving energy these days, which is a great thing, but when it takes 30 seconds to a minute to turn back on when the far end is talking already, you're like, oh, this room is broken. Like, I don't hear any sound, right? So you want to make sure if you guys already have a soundbar, you guys want to make sure that the auto power off and auto power on type of setting is turned off, if you can turn it off. Another thing is the consumer soundbars these days like to just put HDMI port and that's it. There's no other way to send audio signal to that. And what we do find sometimes is when you pull the HDMI sound from the HDMI port from the display into the soundbar, what you find is sometimes the display will add a little bit of latency that will mess with the audio echo cancellation. So you want to kind of try to avoid that as much as possible. So our arsenal of choice is JBL PSB1 soundbar. That one is a dumb soundbar in a smart world. Anything that does not have apps built into it is considered dumb. We call it a dumb soundbar, but it has an analog input and it will not turn off on you. So that's something really That's something you guys can standardize on. Crestron Mercury is Crestron's answer for medium-sized rooms. I won't talk too much into it, but basically it has speaker, microphone, and the controller baked into one unit, and you're able to extend this further out. Poly's Trio, it has a virtual USB input feature, which is pretty cool. What that means is traditionally USB devices have to connect to the Mac Mini in order to send the audio signal. The virtual USB input, what it does is, as long as the Polycom devices is connected to the same network as a Mac Mini, it's able to send the audio input, which is a microphone and the speaker output, and connect over the corporate network. So no need to kind of have a cable to connect the Polycom Trio to the Mac Mini behind the display. So that's a really cool feature. Logitech Rally is another great standard you guys can standardize up to. You can connect up to 7 different microphones, and it comes with 1 or 2 speakers. The camera also has an auto frame feature that's really cool as well. Let's see. Let's talk about camera. Logitech Rally camera, again, you can buy the camera separately, but you cannot buy the audio portion separately. And for more of this, visit Logitech booth. Huddie IQ is another great camera. This one has digital PTZ. It does not have optical PTZ, so something to think about. It makes sense for you guys. It has 120-degree field of view. Logitech Rally has 90. Aver Chem 540 has 82, I believe, and Poly Eagle Eye has 72. Poly also has a booth. I also want to highlight here it's ProAV rooms. So for more information, I will just kind of breeze by this, but more information on ProAV rooms, please go to Studio 1, I think. My fellow teammate Gino is actually giving presentation on specifically ProAV rooms, on training room and things like that. I'll touch on that a little bit, but I won't go too far into it. So for ProAV rooms, another thing I want to highlight here is most likely for ProAV rooms, in order to even procure some of these equipment, you probably need to go through a local integrator or Zoom PSO team. So if you guys are interested in doing these rooms, please let us know. We can point you guys to a certified integrator locally in your area, or we can do it ourselves as well. Another thing on why ProAV rooms is probably for rooms that are more acoustically challenging, where it's all glass all around, concrete floor, open ceiling. You know, it sounds like bathroom basically, right? So for those rooms, you probably need a DSP to kind of fine-tune that room even further. So our microphone of choice for ProAV room is Shure MXA 310s. We have installed so many of these. These sound really great. And Shure booth is actually here as well. If you guys haven't found them yet, they're actually outside of the convention hall, in between the hallway to get from the main hall. There's a short hallway from main hall to the actual expo hall, right? But if you kind of go around to the long way, they actually have a booth there. So you guys can check them out there. You can alter the pickup pattern for the microphones. They have, I think it's called topioid pickup pattern, which cancels the ceiling. So if you have an HVAC system, or if you have a room where the ceiling, there's a lot of noise from the ceiling, you can actually cancel that out. And then we pair that with Shure P300 DSP. One of the big announcements that we're making this year is the native Dante integration, right? So you can actually bypass the Shure P300 this time as well. But if you guys have acoustically challenging room, we do recommend keeping the P300 to do more fine-tuned noise reduction and things like that. Soundbar of choice, obviously JBL soundbar. We already talked about that. Camera. I kind of trimmed it down to Aver Chem 540 or Logitech Rally for best experience. And let's move on to regular conference 9 to 19 rooms. So this is rooms. This is a room where you can do bigger rooms that you can kind of buy all of the equipment yourselves without going through an integrator. So it's QSC ceiling microphones with QSC SPA260 amplifier. Depending on your room, the soundbar may work for you. And I think this is a really good place to talk about distributed audio versus single source audio. So here at Zoom, we like soundbars. The reason is when you're talking to someone face to face, the face matches, or the visuals match where the audio is coming from, right? So as I'm talking to you guys, the sound is coming from these speakers, which is the same direction that I'm speaking to. What if I was speaking to you and there was a speaker in the back that's coming from the back, right? That would feel really awkward. So that's the reason why we like sound bars. But the problem that often occurs is that when you have a longer room, that soundbar cannot output enough audio so that in the back of the room, you can't hear as well. And that's why we recommend ceiling microphones for some of the, or ceiling speakers for some of the longer rooms where you can kind of reach and be right above the participants' heads for those. And then for microphone, we have Shure M3s and Shure MX202s. How we set this up is we have Shure M3s divided along the room, and then the two Shure MX202s are actually right above the display. And the concept is same as front bias, right? We want a microphone when people are facing the front to be able to be picked up. So that's why we added Shure MX202s. And all of these flow into the Focusrite 18i20. If you're a musician, you're probably really familiar with Focusrite. You can buy them off of anywhere, right? And this has 8 input, and you can just plug all of the microphones into that. And you may think, who's doing the AAC? Who's doing the DSP work? We are. So you are utilizing the built-in Zoom's internal DSP for this setup. Camera is the same. I won't talk too much into it. Now let's talk about ProAV conference. And we've done so many of these rooms, and people have been so happy with this design that, like, I think this is one. If I were to take, if you were to say, like, give me one, like, your favorite Zoom room setup internally, I would say it's the ProAV conference room. We have the ceiling microphone, Shure MXA 910s, and distributed ceiling speakers. For DSP, for 9 to 19 rooms, we recommend having 2 Shure MXA 910 microphones. And when you do have that, you will need the additional channels. But Shure did recently announce ability to IntelliMix within their DSP. So you could probably now do this room with the Shure P300 as well if you really needed to. So, but QSC Core 110F is another DSP that Zoom really likes, and Zoom has tested thoroughly. And then same thing with the camera. It's just 2 cameras, Aver Cam 540 and Logitech Rally camera. And then let's talk about training room. So the reason why I kind of flow it this way is because training room is actually very similar to 9 to 19 conference room, except we can no longer mount all of the equipment behind the display, and we actually need a rack unit. So all of the designs before this, because of the simplicity and lack of hardware, you can basically put all of the equipment behind the display without having to home run anything to your LAN closet or having to have a rack space in every conference room. But starting from the training room, we find that you probably do need a rack unit. And the only additional equipment that goes into this room in terms of audio is the Shure MXW wireless series. And we really like this wireless microphone because of the ability to do Dante natively. So no longer need for analog signals to go back and forth with millions of cabling for each additional channel. You just have a single Ethernet cable tying into the Core 110F DSP with the MXA910 ceiling microphones, and you can knock this room out really easily. Two displays, but one thing that I want to note for training room and classroom is the ceiling microphone and ceiling speakers is the confidence monitor. It's really hard to tell from this picture, but there is a display facing the confidence monitor. So how we think about this all-hands space and classroom training type of experience is we think of three different experiences. You have an experience of the presenter, you have the experience of the viewer, and then you have the experience of people joining over Zoom. So we have three experiences, and this display will actually enhance the experience of the presenter. So right now, as I'm speaking, I have this confidence monitor. If you guys didn't know, this is why I was able to talk through this, is I have this confidence right here that I can look at and kind of maintain eye contact. If I didn't, I would have had to constantly turn around, right? So that's why we have the confidence monitor in there, and then we also have a repeat monitor, right? So what you notice in the main hall session is not only did we have the huge LED screen in the front of the room, but we had that projector screens, I think it was somewhat halfway back to help with the people sitting in the back. And this is why we add repeat monitors throughout our training room, because we think that these training rooms are probably much longer and much bigger than your typical 9-19 conference rooms. All-hands space is something similar, except the difference is we don't have a ceiling microphone, and instead we have Q&A mics that can be passed around or catch boxes that you can throw around for Q&A. It's typically for rooms where it's a one-way presentation. So for exact use case like this, where the people on Zoom don't really necessarily have to hear the room the whole time. So we don't have any ceiling microphones here, right? So instead, we have this Q&A microphones distributed out so that when the few times that the audience needs to speak, the people in Zoom can hear. Next, we have divisible rooms. So divisible room is actually really simple with Zoom room setup. And for more of this, talk to or go to the session right after this, or pick up one of these QR codes that have our divisible room design. Essentially what it is, it's a combination of all hands or training room or 9-19 or training room and training room. You can do up to 3, 4, however many you want it. Obviously, the more way it can be divided, the more complex it gets. Most cases, we see 2-way or 3-way divisible. And the difference is we add, it's hard to tell from there, but we add a wall sensor. So based on this wall sensor, when it's open, it will basically tell the video matrix in there. And we use a simple matrix that doesn't have any control, that doesn't have much control baked into it. And basically, it tells when the room is open, route all of the displays to this Mac Mini instead of getting it from. We have a room A Mac Mini, room B Mac Mini, and basically switch will, when the room opens, the switch will basically point all the displays to room A Mac Mini. It will do the same with camera as well. So we use an Alona camera extender where when the room is open, then all of the USB devices will point to room A Mac Mini so that you have control of all of the USB devices. We also have 3 screen conference room as well that I want to lightly touch on. So in this use case, we have the Eagle Eye Director 2, but I don't know if you guys been to the blue conference room upstairs in the expo hall, but I really want to highlight the Jabra Panacast 3. So in that room, you will see the Jabra Panacast built in to the frame of the room, and it has an auto switch that detects based on which microphone the speaker is coming into. So that's something, a new feature that's released at this Zoomtopia, that I would highly encourage you to go the Panacast route. And then there's also a Huddie IQ where you can have one wide footage and have auto frame instead. And in terms of microphones, again, Shure MXA910 with Core 110 with ceiling microphones, or you could do the JBL, depending. Most likely your 3-screen room is much smaller, so you could probably cover it with JBL as well. And something that I didn't add here is the MXL AC44 microphones. So that feature where it has auto switch with the Panacast 3, in order for that to work with your room, you need the special MXL AC44 microphones. And you need to assign left, right, or center and right. All right. And I think, oh, OK. So let's talk about single vendor kits, right? So as you saw in our presentation, you might say, all right, like that sounds really good, but I want to make this simple. I want to just go to one vendor and order everything from one vendor. This is where single vendor kits come in. So Logitech has a single vendor kit, Poly, Yealink, and Crestron has a single vendor kit. So you will go to these vendors, and they will sell you the PC, they will sell you the controller, they will sell you the microphone, speaker, and the camera as a single vendor, so you don't have to piecemeal if you're not all about the piecemeal. We do recommend piecemealing for sometimes for the if you cared about the quality of certain components, such as I really want the Shure microphones for this room because I really want an executive audio quality experience, then you can piecemeal that together. But for most of your rooms, if you wanted to keep it simple, you could go this route as well. You can find the single vendor kits under zoom.us/zoomrooms/hardware. This is our main Zoom Room sites. And if you click on Learn More, the reason why I recommend this site is if you go on Learn More, you can actually get taken to the link of the Amazon page for some and CDW page for some and some of the places where you can actually purchase it there and then. So this is where I would recommend you to that. For the rest of the stuff where you can kind of learn more about how the functional diagram goes, how the elevation, what is Zoom recommendation of the height for the display, what is Zoom recommendation for the height of the ports behind the display. If you go to support.zoom.us and click on the Zoom Rooms, click on Zoom Room Design Guides, you will see all of the rooms that we talked about just now. And then another thing I want to highlight is lighting concepts and acoustic audio concepts and audio guidelines, right? So if you have a room that you haven't even built yet, right? You have a new office space you're moving into, and you get to start fresh, and you get to give input on what acoustic treatment to put in or what lighting equipment to put in. This is our guide to kind of help you guide through some of those steps as well. And this is a second part of the same page. So second part, it has the professional AV designs, additional rooms, and then vendor specific. So you say, all right, single vendor kits is great, but I want to know how those connect. Those will probably show up on the Crestron, Poly, and the Yealink links. All right. Sorry if that was long, but it's time for questions. So if you guys have any questions, I would love to answer them for you here. Do we have someone who can?
Hi, so is that working there? So you kept mentioning the Mac Mini. We started out with some of our conference rooms with Mac Mini, and depending on the devices we were plugging into them, we had horrible problems with based on the USB issues with the Macs. Mm-hmm. And based from your support, we were directed towards the Intel NUCs and the Optiplexes, and haven't had a single issue since. Have you resolved all those issues in the underlying operating system, the Mac, or I'm wondering why you keep mentioning them?
Was there a specific hardware that didn't work with, or USB devices that didn't work with Mac Mini?
Right. Some of them didn't work. Some of them did work. So just it was hit and miss. And then with the PCs, everything works.
Yeah. So what you will see here is that a lot of the hardware components that we talked about here will work really well with Mac Mini. We've tested it with Mac, Dell Optiplexes. The reason why I keep saying Mac Mini is because I like to, it's just like a term that but Optiplex or Mac Mini will basically work. But to answer your question, some of the devices that we've tested had issues with Mac Mini, such as Biamp to Sierra Forte, the DSP. We've had issues with that USB compatibility. We're working with them to fix that. But most of the devices that you will see here, I don't know if you had issues with the devices that you saw in this presentation, but those shouldn't have issues with the Mac Mini at this point. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. We had some problems with some of the Logitech equipment, the earlier Logitech equipment as well.
Okay.
It was hard.
Yeah.
Just abandon all the Mac Minis.
Okay. All right.
Just 2 points. One is you mentioned the Chromebox. Does that support the Zoom Room Control System API yet?
I will get back to you on that, but as far as I know, I think it's limited to Mac and Windows, but I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. And the second point is that there is another control system that makes it really easy to set up your room and control your room, and it's the Mirror Connect, and I'll have some flyers in the back if anyone wants something that's really easy to set up.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Also, another thing that I want to add to that is Zoom's native control. I just did a presentation on it, but now you have the ability to control your lighting, your environmentals directly from your Zoom. So that's something that you guys can talk to your rep about to get more information on.
We're looking to implement Zoom Rooms in kind of a unique use case where we're looking to do recording, like studio recording, like musical recording, and wondering if we've attempted without Zoom Rooms in setups, and we're having trouble with good audio quality going back and forth. We got the Scarlett, the exact model you showed up there, and wondering if you think the quality is good enough to be able to do a producer on one end and a musician on the other end with, is that a case you guys have thought of or something people have tried yet?
Yeah, so with Zoom Rooms, we are thinking about that. So kind of back that up a little bit. Zoom does apply a little bit of, obviously you know that Zoom has a built-in AEC per channel, and there is a way to turn that off. But I think Zoom does a little bit of processing to make sure that your audio quality in terms of voice, because it's built for voice communication, not necessarily for that use case, but that is something that we're looking at. But if you wanted to, you can also look at Zoom Desktop. Currently, Zoom Desktop, you have the option to keep original sound. So for that, you can just turn on keep original sound, where the music portion will sound much better over Zoom.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Hey.
Hi. Yeah. So you didn't mention tracking cameras. So I
Okay.
thought I'd make a little shameless plug for the One Beyond solution for training rooms and those open rooms where a camera can track a presenter as they're walking around. So that integrates really well with Zoom. And also a mic locator camera that wherever the Q&A is,
Yeah.
the mic is, a camera will aim there automatically. So if you want automatic switching between cameras and tracking,
Yeah. Yeah.
feel free to talk to me at One Beyond.
Right. Yeah, so for the sake of this session, the session was kind of trying to portray what Zoom does internally and kind of just showcasing that. But auto tracking has been a lot of requests from customers as well. And what it would be is it would just be an HDMI capture card, and you would kind of lose control, and you would just let the camera control itself by tracking the presenter. Yeah.
So when we were deploying the Zoom, one challenge we have is we separate our wire network and wireless to two different VLAN. So when the PC is connected to the wire and the iPad is connected to the Wi-Fi, they won't be able to communicate with each other, so they won't be able to pair.
Yeah.
Does Zoom have any recommendation, or is there a way we can connect through wire, can connect the iPad
Yes.
directly to the PC?
That's a great question. So the Heckler stands that we recommended, that you have the option to also buy them with a Red Park adapter, Ethernet adapter. So you can use that adapter to not only charge your iPad through PoE, but you can also give data to it and put it on the same wired network as. But you will lose the ability to be able to undock it from your. If you have a wireless dock, then undock it and take it somewhere else in the room or something like that. Okay. But that is definitely an option.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. You said you can have several digital displays or scheduling displays for a particular Zoom room. We presently have a scheduling display right outside of our Zoom room door. How far away can I set up additional scheduling displays? It's like at 40 feet away, 50 feet away, before I have any problem with them actually connecting and getting the signal?
Scheduling this.
The additional scheduling display for your Zoom room. So like when you're outside the door, you can see what meetings are coming up. You can, quickly reserve. You're saying you can have more than one. Presently, I have one. So if I want to put additional ones in, how far away from my room can I be before I have problems?
So let me kind of correct myself if I miscommunicated there. You can have more than one in the sense of you can have multiple scheduling display, but with a single room, the new feature is you can have up to two, right? So, but in terms of distance, it doesn't really, I would say like, so it doesn't, just to answer your question, it's not based on the distance. So for instance, let's say you have a conference room on one end of the office, and you can technically have a scheduling display on the other end as long as they're connected to the internet. I don't know why you would do that, but like if you wanted to kind of space the room and the scheduling display, you can definitely do that. It just needs to be on the same network.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any idea when the Zoom design recommendations on the site will be updated to include the new announcements from Poly and Neat?
We're gonna start actively working on that as soon as we go home after the show. So you'll probably see it. I can't really give you any timeline, but we will be actively working on that. We wanted to keep everything like very, we wanted it to be a surprise for you guys. And so yeah, just give us some time and we'll be able to update it as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys.